Welcome back, everyone. Sorry I haven't done a video in some time, but as you can probably tell from the title of this video, I've been really sick. I want to talk to you today about that adventure because I know many of you are probably wondering when you get sick, hey, do I have COVID or not? What should I do? What's the procedure here? How can I get healthy faster? And I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not an expert in the field at all. What I'm going to tell you is my experience, what it was like, what I did, why I thought I had COVID, and it was a real adventure. It was terrifying in some ways, and I want to share that with you, so hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So my journey, my adventure in being super sick actually started in a different country. I was very excited to receive an invitation to travel, and being cooped up in this office here for almost 2 years now, I jumped at the opportunity. Was there a risk to travel? Of course. I was on my own. I took all the precautions that I possibly could. And I knew that there was a possibility that I could get COVID just due to travel. You're not really encouraged to travel still, although many of us are just dying to do it. And I went for it. And I don't have any regrets, actually. So I went to Riga, Latvia. And I'm based in Canada. So that's a pretty long trip for me. I ended up having 3 different stopovers. And it took me about 24 hours to go from here to there. It was not the most enjoyable trip. One of the very first things I discovered when I went to the airport here in Canada was there was more worker staff than there was actually tourists traveling, which was really bizarre. There was no lineups. Everything was very quick. And when I went to get my burger, I asked how things were, how business was. And it was very strange because they said, well, it's been pretty good. It comes in waves. We expect another big wave in another couple hours once they cancel all the flights. I was like, what? They said, yeah, they cancel all the flights typically because there's not a lot of planes in the air and they condense it down, and that's just what happens because it's COVID. So because my flight was in about an hour, that was rather alarming for me. I think that has been happening quite a bit. It didn't happen to me. Luckily, I had no cancellations, no delays. Probably the first time ever that that's happened to me, because usually I'm totally unlucky that way. But I did get my flight. But I think that's the first learning opportunity for us, is that with COVID, as we begin to return to normal, we're going to have to expect time for the travel industry to ramp up. Planes are not going to magically appear, so there's going to be some turbulence. Pardon the pun. So I think that having your flights canceled could be a real thing. So we really need to plan around that, have those stopovers at the different airports, have enough time to be able to, react to that sort of thing. I used to say an hour and a half minimum. Now with COVID, I'm saying probably 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours maybe minimum as a stopover, just because I do expect delays and possibly even cancellations. So yeah, so that's the first thing to watch out for. I got to Latvia, everything was good, I was healthy. I took a lot of vitamins with me, so that's the one thing that everybody's telling me. They say, hey Rob, take lots of vitamins, take lots of vitamin C, some vitamin D, some echinacea, some cortisone. I may be saying that wrong, but take all the vitamins, right? So that's what I was doing. I had my little Ziploc bag with my vitamins in there, and I was taking those every day. When I got to Latvia, I noticed I had a little bit of a cough. I don't know if I developed that there or here in Canada, but I was doing a speaking engagement when I was there, and I really didn't want to be coughing on stage. So I took a lot of Tylenol. Tylenol is kind of my go-to painkiller for any of those sort of issues. So I took a couple Tylenols just before I got up on stage, and that worked pretty well. And the cough did not really progress very much for me throughout my trip. I felt pretty good throughout my trip. However, about halfway through my trip, it was announced that Riga had turned into a red zone, and the government had declared a national emergency for that area, which was a little bit alarming for me. Part of that was politics. They wanted to get more people vaccinated in that area. There was very low vaccination rates there. I believe it was about 50%. So not great. And so as a repercussion of that, Canada said, hey, if you're coming back to Canada, you now have to get tested. You have to get a negative PCR test, not a fast test, but a PCR test, which takes time. If you're in your home country, that may not be a big deal. However, for me, it was a big deal because there's not a lot of places there that advertise in English. And I don't speak Latvian or German or Russian. So that was a bit challenging for me to find a place that it would actually give me a PCR test within the 24 hours that I had left before I left to come home. So I ended up signing up on a couple different websites to get my testing done. I found out that the airport in Riga actually had testing up until midnight. So I took a cab there very quickly, got my testing done, and they said, hey, you're lucky you came here because if you went anywhere else, you would not get your testing done in time. It's like, whew, okay, great. Thank you very much. Went back to my Airbnb, relaxed a little bit, knowing that they were going to send me an email within 24 hours with my results. As long as it wasn't positive, I could get back home. So I felt pretty good, except they never sent me the email. I waited and I waited and I waited, and they never sent it to me. So I ended up going to the airport that morning. I knew I had a stopover in Frankfurt, so I signed up for rapid testing in the Frankfurt airport. It costs about 300 euros, and it's done in 30 minutes. So super expensive, but that was my only way to get on the plane to come back to Canada. So I thought, I've got to do it. But I popped into the clinic in Riga, and I said, hey, where are my test results? I paid for 24 hours, and you never sent them to me. They seemed very confused, which was not unusual there. Scratched their heads and took forever trying to, I think, perhaps just discourage me from following up with them. And then finally said, oh, sorry, everything takes longer right now because we have a lot of COVID. So I was like, yeah, but I paid for 24 hours. If it takes longer than 24 hours, it really doesn't help me. So just give me my money back and I'll leave. Getting a refund in Riga seemed like a new concept because they didn't really know what to do. They fumbled around for a little while and just said, hey, we'll get back to you. But they also found my test results during that whole thing. So that was good, and they gave me my test results, which allowed me to cancel my Frankfurt testing, saved me 300 euros, because that was only 30 euros, and allowed me to get back on the plane to Canada. My test results were negative, so that was great. I was allowed on the plane. That was the first time I had done testing while I was in Riga. I'd done testing before I went to Riga, and it was negative as well. And then testing in Riga was negative. So I was looking good from a COVID perspective. Got on the plane and flew to Frankfurt, had a bite to eat in Frankfurt, got on the plane again to come to Canada, about an 8-hour flight. Got on the plane, everything was looking good. I had an empty seat right beside me, which is amazing. Gives me a little more leg room, and a place to put some of my stuff. And then on the left-hand side of me, a family came in. Not always a good sign on a plane. The family came in with a younger son who was definitely sick, and that was bad. It's always bad when somebody's sick on the plane. So the young son had some ear problems, an earache due to the flight going up and down, and the elevation of the flight rather, causing pressure on the young boy's ear. This is usually caused by something. It doesn't usually just happen. So of course the kid was sick, was congested, and as a result, I don't know the science behind it, but you're going to get that earache. He was given some pain relief, and so for about half the time he cried and half the time he slept. But I remember thinking about that, thinking that can't be good. And sure enough, it wasn't. So I got home, and about day 2 after getting home, I started to feel something's definitely wrong. It's usually when you wake up in the morning and you're like, yeah, something's different here. And for me, it was a sore throat. As I got up, my throat was sore, and my cough had actually gotten worse. Immediately, I thought, I must have COVID. I'm coming from Latvia. It's a red zone, a lot of COVID there. A lot of people are not vaccinated there. So that was the first thing I thought of. On day 3, my symptoms started to increase. I had a lot of phlegm. I was very stuffed up, headaches, super tired. And I was really getting a little bit worried at that point. That's when I decided, okay, I'm definitely going to go get tested right now. And that was a good idea. I highly recommend people, whenever they have symptoms, to go get tested. Even if you don't think it's COVID, even if your symptoms are not COVID related, I think it's a good idea to get tested. Here in Canada, we have some great facilities where you can just drive your car through. It's kind of a drive-in testing. And they have these big tents, and you just line up. It takes about 15-20 minutes when they're not too busy. Might take you about an hour when they're busy. You get tested. Once you're tested, you get your results by email or text within about 24 hours. It's great. So it allows you to know, do I need to quarantine? How serious is this? Do I have COVID? All those things. So it's great. I highly recommend any symptoms at all, get tested right away. So I got tested. I thought for sure I've got COVID. Test results came back negative. So that was really good for me because I live here with my family. I didn't want to infect them with COVID. I was trying to be very safe. If I've just got the normal flu, sure, I feel better that I'm not going to endanger them with COVID. Still, I was very careful with my quarantine. I don't want to give anybody the flu, especially this flu, because it was nasty. I continued to work from home, of course, like I have been for the last 2 years. So I was able to work, although I was just super tired. I couldn't talk very much. I was coughing a lot, taking a lot of medications. I was using this little temperature gun thing. Does not work very well. If you've got one of these, I bought one of these before, just as COVID was breaking out. I thought this is going to be cool. I'm going to use it all the time. It's kind of cool because it's got like a little laser thing. I don't think it's that accurate, really. So some of the medicines that I took, I like Tylenol. I talked about that. I took a lot of Tylenol. I also took this. It kind of breaks up the phlegm, which was crazy during this flu. And so it's kind of like those other medicines that you take for your cough, although this one just really works on breaking it down. And for me, that was really helpful. I took tons of Tylenol. I ran out of Tylenol, so I ended up I had some kids' Tylenol here, some chewables, which I just chewed through very quickly. And the other ones that I really liked were NyQuil. I like the NyQuil ones. You could take the daytime and the evening ones. Don't mix those up because that's not good. Then you'll feel really tired all day. But I ended up doing that, and that worked really well as well. The combination of those three things worked very well. I also bought some cough candy things. I bought these guys here. I don't know if that'll be in focus or not for you. Let's see. Anyway, they're a herbal candy. Nim Jiam is the name of them. And there's also a liquid that you can buy like this as well, which actually works really good too for your cough. It's all herbal, so I think maybe that's good, maybe. But it works well, so. I'm still coughing. And then the week progressed, so I think day 4 or 5, my conditions were getting even worse. So then I started to think, wait a minute, did I use mouthwash just before I went to get my testing done? Because it was one of the testing for COVID where you spit in the vial. I thought maybe the mouthwash diluted my COVID germs and produced a false negative. So I went and got tested again, and it came back negative again. And so by that time I was like, okay, fine. I don't have COVID, but it's really bad flu. So I don't want anybody else to get it, so I followed all the precautionary things that you do with COVID. Wore my mask in the house, stayed in this room for the most part, used my own bathroom, and really tried to separate myself from the rest of my family. And so far, nobody else has gotten it, so you're welcome. I think that worked pretty well. So something that you can do if you've got COVID or the bad flu is just really isolate yourself as much as possible. The other thing that I did, which is a little unusual for me, is no exercise. When I was worried that this was COVID, I was really worried that it was going to move from my throat, which had actually big lumps on it, and I forgot to mention that. I could actually feel the lumps here, which have gone down now, although I'm still coughing a little bit. I was worried it was going to go into my lung area, which is what COVID does, and that can be very dangerous. So if it was to do that, I was going to be calling the hospital and showing up, because I'd gone through quite a few days, right? And so I was really worried about that. It never did that. It never left my throat. It never went to my lungs, which is great. The other thing that it never did, which is kind of a COVID sign, was I never lost my sense of smell or taste. I ate a lot of porridge. I ate a lot of soups, things that were very easy to eat. Anything that was warm on my throat really helped. So I had a lot of honey and lemon drinks. That helped a lot as well. And just to keep my throat kind of lubricated, and that warm liquid really helped quite a bit. So you could try that, soups and porridges and things like that. But I didn't do any exercise, and that was by design. I really didn't want to push my lungs. I'm in week 2 now of being sick. I'm feeling better. As you can tell, I can talk. I'm still coughing a little bit. I'm actually editing this film to cut out all the coughing that I'm doing. But for the most part, I feel much better. Could I exercise today? Sure, I could. Tomorrow, I may do a little bit of cardio just to start warming things up. I did go for a walk today, actually. I forgot about that. But that kind of made me cough a little bit more. So I'm trying to be very careful with that. What you don't want to do is push it. You don't want to go out and right when you're starting to recover, go do a big workout. Because I've heard that really can set you back. It can make you much worse. So just be careful with that, okay? This was the worst flu that I ever remember having. And I've had a lot of bad flus. I've had pneumonia. I've been really sick before. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's just I forget how bad these flus are, or whether the whole COVID thing has amplified the normal flu, or what is happening here. But I can tell you that this flu was nasty. Like, it was so painful. I was just so exhausted. I usually weigh about 170 pounds. I jumped on the scale. I was 160. So I lost about 10 pounds. To be totally honest, I was trying to lean out a little bit before I got sick. So I may have been down to like 168, maybe even 167 and a half. So maybe not the full 10 pounds, but definitely 7 or 8 pounds I lost during that week. So to lose that much in that short time frame can tell you like how bad it was. I was just drenched in sweat every night. I didn't eat very much, and it was just nasty. So be really careful out there, even if you're not getting COVID. If you're getting this flu, it's bad. It's going to knock you out for a while. So be careful. Just wear your mask if you want, and just be careful around sick people. If you're going to travel like I did, not much you can do. Take your vitamins. Just try to be safe as possible. Wipe things down if you think people may have touched it, and just try to be clean. Right? That's what I always try to do. And now for recovery, I'm going to keep drinking some soups, taking my vitamins, and I'm going to start exercising probably in the next couple days. But that's my journey. I hope that helps you a little bit. Just be careful out there. This was not COVID for me, but I have to really advocate the testing. For me, I think testing is as important as vaccination. And I know that that could be controversial, but I'm fully vaccinated. I'm not advocating vaccination, but I think that because it can go either way, and I know there's a lot of politics around that. However, I think testing, we can all probably agree, is a good idea. If you get the results right away, you can tell, okay, I'm not going to go out and infect people. I'm just going to stay at home for 2 weeks. And I think that can really help us to stop the spread. Just my personal opinion, but I think rapid testing, quick results is the way to go here, just from my experience with this whole thing. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. And if you get sick, I hope you have a fast recovery. Hopefully you don't get sick. But that's my journey. That's why I haven't made videos in a little while. Now I'm feeling better. I got a bunch of videos all queued up, and I'm hoping to get those out to you. Both trip reports as well as some product reviews. So that's it for me. Safe travels. See you later.